Good morning. My name is Mike Zellers. This is CISS216, Introduction to Web Development. I am going to assume that you've all looked at the stuff for week one, all right, the recorded lecture, and a little bit about how this class is structured. And if you have any questions about the way that the class is structured, please let me know. Again, this course is designed to give you as much flexibility as possible because you can come in person and watch the lectures. You can watch them live on WebEx, which we see a number of people are doing here. All right. Or you can watch the recording of the lecture after the fact. Typically, the recording of the lecture will be the lecture I delivered that day. Like I will post this lecture probably within an hour of the end of this lecture. But in some cases, like if I were to be out sick or something, I might post a lecture from a previous semester, which is what I did last semester. So which is what I did last week. I posted from the previous semester because I didn't want us to get behind. All right. So at any rate, we're going to start off by looking at the example that I went over in that first lecture, and then we're going to expand upon it. So I have a very, very, very simple web page. All right, welcome to fall semester. All right, well, I need to update that, right, because it's spring semester, but we can do that today. Fall semester begins August 22nd, and so on. Notice how we have some text that is bigger than other text. This text, for example, is the biggest. This text is also the biggest. Well, this text is a little smaller, and this text is smaller still. Let's take a look at how that is accomplished. It's accomplished through the use of what are called tags. All right, and we'll take a look at tags in a second here. You can use any text editor, by the way, to code your HTML files. You can, for example, open an HTML file in Notepad if you want, or Notepad++. The one thing I suggest to use is it takes a little bit of time to learn, but I think it's well worth it, is an application called Visual Studio Code, which is free to download, and it has some nice features to it. So I'm going to right mouse and I'm going to open this in Visual Studio Code. And here we have the web page. First of all, notice that there's more stuff than the stuff that we just saw on the screen. I mean, here's the text that we saw on the screen. Welcome to fall semester. Fall semester began on such and such date, Professor Zeller's Monday schedule, Tuesday schedule. All right. There's other stuff in addition to the text that we saw on the screen. And those things are called tags. Tags do a number of things. First of all, they define sort of the structure of the web page. And they tell what the content, what the text or other content on the page means. For example, this is meant to be a heading. All right. Welcome to fall semester is not just a plain paragraph of text, it's a heading. Therefore, it's enclosed in an H1 tag. Now, when I say an H1 tag, what do I mean? A tag consists of two pieces: start tag and the end tag. And the start and end tag are both enclosed in these angled brackets or the less than and greater than sign. What that is doing is that's telling the web browser what to make of this text. All right. In other words, that's telling us that this is not just a plain paragraph of text. This is a special text. This text is meant to be a heading, And what's more, it's meant to be a top level heading. That's what the 1 means. So H1 means it's a heading level 1 heading, or top level heading. And that will be displayed by default as the largest text that you see. So if we look at this page, we see that sure enough, welcome to fall semester is the largest stuff on the page. This is a paragraph. We edit it, say spring, and I'll save it. I'm saving it as a .html document. That's very important. Regardless of the tool that you use to create it, be sure to save your page as a .html document. And then if we refresh the page, well, I changed that. I forgot to change the heading. So let me go back and change the heading. So again, that H1 is the top level heading, which means it's going to be the biggest text on the page. A paragraph is just a plain old paragraph of data, and that will be in normal font, normal size font. Now, what I'm describing today, the defaults for these things. About 2 or 3 weeks, in about a week or two, I'm going to talk about another language called cascading style sheet. That allows you to change the defaults. So for example, this is how big H1 is made by default. If you want it bigger, well, with cascading style sheets, we can make it bigger. We're still going to use the same H1 tag because it's still a top level heading. But we might want to make that top level heading bigger than the default. So everything I'm describing today is the default. All right, so by default, a paragraph is just normal size. If I happen to have a second paragraph, I'll copy and paste. Here is a second paragraph. Just going to enter some stuff in here. And if I go and save it and refresh it, that second paragraph appears on its own line. So a paragraph appears on its own line. All right. Now, paragraphs are what are called nested, or I'm sorry, tags are what are called nested. What that means is tags can appear in other tags. So for example, this is the very highest level tag, an HTML tag. That tells the web browser that everything between here and here is HTML code. So everything between those two tags are going to be treated as HTML code. An HTML document is separated into 2 things, a head and a body. The body is everything that you see on the screen here. The head contains, for now, is going to contain one thing, and that's the title of the page. And notice how the title of the page appears in the tab up here. So the title is first example. Therefore, first example appears up here. Everything between the start and ending tag is considered to be part of that tag. So the title is the word first example. Nice thing about this Visual Studio Code is if you hover over the tag, it gives you an explanation. All right. Tags with very few exceptions come in pairs, the start and the end. And the start tag looks like this. The end tag looks the same as the start tag, except it has a slash before the name of the tag. Now, what do you suppose is going to happen if I forget this end tag? Let's find out. If I forget the end tag, why did it do that? Why did it make those paragraphs big? Well, let's look. The H1 tag says, here is where the top level heading begins. Where does a top level heading end? The ending is supposed to be there, but it's not there. Therefore, the web browser, the program that reads and displays web pages, is going to assume, well, everything else is part of the H1 too, until we get to this end H1 tag. Notice that the web page didn't break, it didn't blow up. You know, we could still view the web page. It's just that it didn't look the way that we thought it would look or the way we wanted it to look. That's a very important thing to note, is that HTML is a very forgiving language, right? If you make a mistake, it's going to try its best to still display the page. It's just that if you break the rules, and all bets are off. It might show up any number of different ways. All right, we have our couple of paragraphs. We have another H1. Then we have an H2. An H2 is meant to be like a second level heading. Like if we were doing an outline. Doing an outline, Monday's schedule and Tuesday's schedule is underneath Professor Zeller's, right? Because there could be another professor with their schedule here. So Monday's schedule is not another H1, but it's an H2 because it's second level is underneath Professor Zeller's, and so is Tuesday's schedule. Some of these tags are going to be on every single page that you have. You're going to have on every single page an HTML tag with this little bit of extra that says the language that you're using is English. And then the end HTML tag down here. Inside it, you're going to have the head and the body. The head has the title. The body has whatever stuff we want to put on the page. Again, the head and body both have a start and end tag. Finally, we have H1s, H2s, H3s, H4s. It actually goes up to H6. Now, that doesn't mean that you can only have 6 headers on a page. It means you can have 6 levels of headers on a page. Like if you're doing an outline for an English class, you know, you'd have Roman numeral 1. Then underneath that, you'd have A. Then underneath that, you'd have 1. Then you'd have lowercase a, and then you'd have Roman numeral, you know how outlines work. You can go 6 levels deep. And if you ever have a web page that goes more than 6 levels deep, you probably have too much on that page. And it's probably best to break it down into a couple of pages. Any questions about what we had in this example? Now, a couple things to know. That computer, the browser, when I say the computer, I mean the web browser, doesn't care a lot about spacing. What I mean by that is I could put this on different lines like that if I wanted to. If I thought it made it more readable. Because what you want is you want your code to be readable. Notice how I indented every time when a tag was inside another tag. So the head is inside the HTML tag, and the title is inside the head tag. So the head's indented a little bit and the title's indented a little bit. Beyond that, it doesn't care if the title is all one line or if I have the title tag. Then on the next line, I have the actual title. Then I have the end tag. The web browser is going to display it exactly the same way. It also doesn't matter if there's extra spaces in there, called white space. So like if you're typing and you put, 10 spaces here and type something else. If I save it, the web browser reduces any white space. And by white space, I mean spaces, tabs, new lines. It replaces all that with just a single space. Now that can be a little annoying at first until you get used to it, but it's actually a blessing because when you do that, what happens is the web browser will automatically format your paragraphs for you. So if your window is very wide, it will put the paragraph all on one line. If I have a narrower window, it breaks it down and puts it into 2 lines. So it's actually good that the web browser does that. It takes a while to realize that. And if we were going to look at this, this might be how the page would appear on a computer or a laptop. This might be how the page would appear on a mobile device, like a phone, who typically has narrower screens. All right. If you have questions about that, let me know. Let's go on to the second example. And the second example is going to be similar to the first. All our web pages are going to sort of look the same until we get into cascading style sheets, right? Because we're going to always be using the default for displaying stuff on the screen. So here I have 2 web pages. And in this example, we'll look at some additional tags, and we'll also look at how to create a link between 2 pages. If I open up this page, this is about Lorain County Community College. It's about its computer information systems programs. And we have programming, web programming, mobile software development, and networking. Couple things to notice here. One of them is when you click on one of these links, you jump to that point on the page, or you can jump back to the top. If we click on this, we get taken to another page. And we have a list of links here. Notice that this is a bullet point. That's a list. All right, like you might see in Word or other Office products. So there's some new stuff going on here. And so let's take a look at it and see, first of all, what this has in common with the other page that we did. And then second of all, let's look at the extra stuff that's in this page. So I'm going to open up index.html, and I'm going to open it up in Visual Studio Code. Again, that's not a requirement, but it's a suggestion. And we'll notice that right off the bat, there's some things in common. There's this thing at the very top, which I didn't mention before. That's called a document type. That again provides information to the browser about what kind of document that it gets. All right. So you're getting an HTML document. The browser is. This isn't a tag. This is a declaration. This little thing up here, the exclamation point, is what makes it a declaration. And there's no ending tag or declaration for this. You just have this at the very beginning. All right, let's see what we have in common with the other page. We still have our HTML document. I did neglect to put language equals EN. That will help web browsers and search engines to display and to return this correctly. You can, for example, through Google search for documents that are in English if you're studying a topic and you only want to see the English language versions. Or if you speak another language and you wanted only Spanish pages that were in Spanish, you could put that into Google's advanced search. And that language helps tell Google that this is in this language. So we have our HTML tag and we have our end HTML tag. So everything between it is part of this HTML document. The head looks the same. The head has a title, and that's it. The head is part of the HTML document, so it's underneath the HTML tag, but before the end HTML tag. We have our start head and an end head, and inside the head, we have the title. For now, that's all we're going to put in the head section. Later on, we'll add some things, but for now, this is all we're going to put in the head section. Then we have our body section with the end body. And inside this, we have a whole bunch of extra tags. First of all, we have a header tag. Now, I realize this is confusing, and a lot of students get a little mixed up about like the difference between a head and a header. All right. The head is one of two parts of a web page, the head and the body. The header is sort of like a heading on the top of the page. If you go to any website, just about any website, notice there's sort of like a banner at the top of the page. All right. We have it on Lorain Community College's website. If we went to Amazon, the site can't be reached. Interesting. There we go. There's this banner on the very top of the page. That's what the header is. It's meant to be the banner on the very top of the page. And in our case, it consists of this stuff. So our header contains an H1 and an H2. So this is about Lorain County Community College. And what about Lorain Community College is it? It's about our computer and information systems programs. So that's going to appear on the page. If we were doing, let's say we were writing from scratch a whole new website for Lorain Community College, we might have the header appear like this on all our pages, and the very top headline would still always be Lorain County Community College, and the second H2 might be different on each page. You know, there might be one for nursing, or one for economics, or one for biology, or whatever. It's a second level heading. What we're describing with the tags in this example is breaking down the page into sections and describing what each section is. So this section of code is the header of the page. Now later on it's going to be important because we're going to style this. We might want our header to be a certain color, for example, all right, to set it apart from the rest of the page. All right, then we have a navigation. And navigation is a set of links. And links are, again, if you go to any website, you'll see on the top of the page, there's typically a navigation. Links to get you to different places. One of the important things about designing a website is to have a very clear navigation, so people don't have to guess how to get to a piece of information. That it's put right out there in front of them, and it's obvious how to navigate through the system. So these collection of links form the navigation. They go from here to here. Everything in between this is a navigation. Now, what is a navigation? It's a list of links. So we're going to use an unordered list tag. Unordered list displays stuff in the list, a little bit indented with a bullet point. Again, by default. You can just, in your mind here, anytime I say this is how it looks for the next couple of weeks, think in your mind by default. All right, if we don't have any CSS code. So, an LI is a list item. So we have our unordered list that consists of a series of list items. What do those list items contain? They contain a set of links. Several different kinds of links. We're going to see 3 different kinds of links on this page. We're going to see a link to a section of our page. We're going to see a link to another web page. And then we're going to see a link to email. All right. All of the links look the same. They have an A tag. A means anchor or link. Don't ask me why it's an A. I didn't make it up. I'm just here teaching it. Right? Href is where the link is going to take you. And it doesn't make any sense to have a link without an href. Yeah, I got rid of the href for that first link. Browser doesn't know what to do with it. We said this is a link, but we didn't say a link to what? So every link is going to have an href to it. In this case, notice it says # or hashtag, depending on how old you are, programming. When you see a hashtag or #, that says take me to this section of the page. In other words, take me to the place on the page where there is an ID of networking. So when I click this, it takes me to the page, the part of the page where networking is, and it displays that. Some of the other ones. Web takes us to #web. That's this code here, an ID. Takes us to web programming. So that's one kind of link. A link is called an internal link because it takes you to a section of the page. That's how all of these work. Href and ID, by the way, are called attributes. They're not tags. An attribute is extra information about the tag. So in this case, A is a tag. href is the attribute that tells us where the link's going to take you. So yes, this is a link. Take me to the section of the page called programming. Take me to the section of the page called networking or whatever. An ID can be placed on any tag. That's simply giving like a name to that tag. IDs need to be unique. In other words, I could not have two things on the page that have an ID of programming. Only one. Will it cause the web page to blow up? Probably not, but it won't work the way that you might expect. So we have our header section that contains these headings. We have our navigation section, which contains a list. UL goes around the whole list. LI goes around each list item. And then each list item is comprised of a link. Now notice between the start A and the end A, we have some text. That's important because we have to give the user something to click on, right? Wouldn't be any good if we had a link like this. Because there's nothing for the user to click on to get to that. Therefore, we have to give part of our link some text for the user to click on. So every link is going to look like this. It's going to look like a start. It's going to have a start A. It's going to have href equals something, right? Then the end to indicate that this is an A tag. Then there's going to be some text to click on for the user. And then there's going to be the end A tag. So regardless of the kind of link it is, it's going to look like this. All right, let's scroll down a bit. Here I have an article. Each of these sections on the page, I'm calling an article. So this is an article. This is an article. And so on. Might not be immediately obvious why we do that. It will become a lot more obvious when we get into CSS. But it helps us organize our page. We can treat every article the same way in CSS. So we could put a border around every article to make each article stand out, to help the user visually organize the page. But for now, just trust me in saying that if you have sections of the page, split them up by either article, or you can actually use a section tag, and it works about the same way. There's really not a huge difference between a section tag and an article tag. Both say that this is a section of the page. Now, what's inside that article? We have our H1, which is a top level heading for that article. We give it an ID of programming so that when the user clicks on programming, it takes it there. We have an H2 that says C#, And we have some paragraphs and H2s and so on down the line. We also have two different kinds of two links in here. One says a link to another web page. Another one of your web pages, or my web pages in this case. So if you remember back when we started this example, there's two web pages, index.html and tutorial.xhtml, or HTML rather, I'm sorry. Now, if the pages are in the same folder, to link to one to the other, all you have to do is, for the href, put in the name of the page. So this link will take us to my second page. If I click that, it takes me to this page. I click that, it takes me back to the home page. Pound sign, remember, what's a pound sign or hashtag do? It takes me to a part of the page, a section of the page. If it's only the hashtag, it means go back to the top of the page. So if I'm scrolling somewhere on the page and I click that back to top link, it takes me back to the top of the page. And that's our first article. We're taking the body of this page and we're splitting it up into sections. This is a header, navigation, and we have a group of articles. Here's our second article. This has an ID of web so that when we click on web, it takes me to that point of the page. Have my H1s, my H2s, have my list items. The only difference between, in this case, I have list items that are not links, right? So a list can be a list of anything. So in the first example, in the navigation section, I had a list of links. Here I have just a list of words or phrases. Then I can go back to the top. Another article, another back to the top, and another different kind of link. Notice this link looks different than any of the other links because it begins with https://. All right. That tells a web browser that the page that we want to link to is not part of this site. It's a part of another site. So when I click on link to Android, it's going to take me to the official Android page. How does it know that? Because of the HTTP at the beginning. If I were to forget that, the link wouldn't work because it would think I have a web page called www.android.com, and I don't have a web page named that. Final thing on the page, after all these articles, is a footer. And a footer is something that's on the bottom of the page. A lot of times you'll see copyright information, or you might see some links here that are sort of secondary that don't get put in the main navigation. Or in this case, I have a link to email me. When I click that, it's going to open up whatever your email program is. And email is not set up on this machine. So I'm going to pretend that it is. If we had our email set up in Outlook, it would open up Outlook and start an email to that email address. And the difference between that is the href. The href says mail to : and then it has the name of the email address. So we have tags, which we covered last time. Right? Tags appear in pairs. Tags are nested. Nested simply means that if a tag starts inside of a tag, it ends inside of a tag. So for example, it wouldn't be correct if I put the and li down here, because the li starts within the ul, but the li doesn't end within the ul. That's what I mean by properly nested. White space in tags don't matter, so I could put as much space as I wanted to here between ASP.NET Web Forms. When the browser displays it, it's going to use a single space between each thing. The consequence of this is you should make your web pages look neat so you can easily find things. I'm not a neat person in real life. All right, that's an understatement. You can probably tell my hair's probably sticking up in so many directions, and my beard, and my shirt's untucked and all that. So I'm not a neat person in everyday life. But the web page code, I try to make as neat and clean as possible. What do I mean by that? I mean indenting to show what belongs with what. What tags have we seen? We've seen the HTML, the head, and the title. Inside the body, we've seen the H1, H2s, and paragraphs. And then in this example, we've seen header, nav, article, and footer, all of which relate to the different sections of the page. We've seen several different kinds of links that all more or less behave the same. Like this. We have our start tag. The href is different, but it has the start of the tag, the text, and the end of the tag. Are there any questions about anything we covered today in class or from last time? And I'll ask you also that are watching this if you have any questions. If you're watching this remotely, feel free to put the question in chat, or I suppose you can hit your mic. I think you can hit your microphone and I'll be able to hear you. But you can also put it in chat if you don't feel like speaking on mic. Other questions? I know it's early in the morning, but we're excited about this class, aren't we? I'm excited about this class. It's a lot of fun. This is one of the funnest classes I teach, and the students really seem to respond to it. It'll take a couple weeks for us to cover like sort of the standard things. You'll really be able to show your creativity when we start putting CSS on the page. Then you can make your web pages look different than everyone else's web pages. And that's where, in my mind, this class gets really, really fun and cool. All right, any questions? All right, those of you that are here, I'll go open up our lab, which is right across the hall, B102. Those of you that are on remote, I will be back in the WebEx channel at 10 o'clock or shortly after that. Answer any questions that you have. All right. We'll see you in one of the labs, either virtual or in person. The lab is optional, by the way. And if I don't see you in one of the labs, I will see you next week. So take care.